So the author, may Allah have mercy on him, he covered certain amount of information for us. And then he wanted to talk about something related to Nahu. We started that last week. So right there, before we go further, that's a great place for us just to back up and review, insha'Allah ta'ala. So I'd like to review with you, insha'Allah. We're going to repeat from the beginning, less details, maybe a little bit faster or slower sometimes. Inshallah, we'll catch right back up to where we were. Okay, so here we are at the beginning. And the author said, may Allah have mercy upon him. He started by defining sarf. He said, "I'lam anna tasrifa fi al-lugha at-taghyir." So tasrif, you remember, tasrif is sarf. But tasrif is amplified form. You'd say, because you're familiar now, you'd say, sarafa yasrifu sarfan. Sarafa, sarafa yasrifu sarfan. So you know that's the maldi, the mudari', and what? The masdar, source noun. You'd say sarrafa yusarrifu. You know that's going to start with a dhamma, that mudari', because the maldi has 4 letters. Tasrifan. Tasrifan. So that's where those 2 words come from. Sarf and tasrif. Each one is a source noun. So this field is called sarf, or it's called tasrif. What's the difference between those? So one of the differences between, let's say, this first form and this second form is the second one being more emphatic. يعني the wazn فعل يفعل تفعيلا, this pattern itself, it has the meaning of doing something a lot more. So it doesn't really show up in the translation. This science is called sarf or tasrif. Tasrif means in the language taghyir, altering. He says, وفي الصناعة تحويل الأصل الواحد إلى أمثلة مختلفة لمعاني مقصودة. And in the craft, tasrif means transforming one source, yani a source, into various patterns. Transforming a source into various patterns, لمعاني مقصودة, for sought meanings. Those patterns themselves have meanings. So here's the code of the Arabic language, or part of the code. You have letters, like 3 letters, for example. Doesn't have to be only 3. These 3, a combination of 3 letters, they have a meaning. And you have patterns. These patterns have meanings. So you're going to apply those letters to these patterns so that you can arrive at some meaning that you want to convey. What are those? Let me remind you. Bismillah. So he says, تحويل الأصل الواحد. That's a hamza. تحويل الأصل الواحد. So what's this asl? You already know. Yani, I could ask you, but I'm just going to tell you. Asl, which means source or origin. It's either going to be al-maldi, past tense verb, or it's going to be al-masdar, source noun. And actually, you should know, we take the saying that it's the masdar We're going to stick to that. But some scholars say it's not the masdar that's the origin that you're transforming into everything else. It's the madi, past tense verb. So you'd say fa'ala, yaf'alu, fi'lan, fahuwa fa'il, وذاك مفعول. So fa'ala, he did. Yaf'alu, he does. Fi'lan, a doing. فهو فاعل, so he's a doer. وذاك مفعول, and that is done. So all these different examples here, all these patterns here, is one of them a source for the rest of them? Yes. Which one of them is the source for the rest of them? Some of the scholars, they said it's the Malbi. They said the Malbi is the source for the rest of them. They say, don't you see, we start with it, and don't you see everything else has the same number of letters or more? You build from the Malbi. So that's the al-asl. And some of them, they said, this is the strong saying, no, in fact, it is the masdar. That's the one that you take everything else from, even though you don't start with it. So the author, he said a neutral word to accommodate both of these madhabs. He said, al-asl al-wahid. Asl, one source. So if you take the way that the source is the Malbi, then that's how you're going to interpret the word asl. And if you take the saying that it's the masdar, then you're going to interpret the asl as the masdar. Say if you didn't want to go into details with someone, you wanted to just skip something, you might just immediately say, the meaning of al-asl al-wahid here is the masdar. Any question? Okay. And there's other patterns too, like af'al. Af'al, that's superlative, like akbar, greater, more. Af'al, akbar, a'lam. So that's going to come from the masdar too. Whatever it is you're whatever meaning you're trying to apply to the superlative. Then he said, ثُمَّ الْفِعْلُ إِمَّا ثُلَاثِيٌّ وَإِمَّا رُبَاعِيٌّ. Then the verb either has 3 original letters or 4 original letters. So never 2, never 5. You remember the examples. So for thulathi, many examples. For ruba'i, probably this is the one you want to then remember. Keep it close. Because even though you might not see 4-lettered, and a lot of verbs that have originally 4 letters, still, it is an origin in Arabic language. So keep the case of dahraja close. That's a model for you. Dahraja. Ruba'i. Pattern fa'lala. He says, وَكُلُّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَا إِمَّا مُجَرَّدٌ أَوْ مَزِيدٌ فِيهِ. And each one of those, whether it has 3 original letters or 4 original letters, it could be just devoid of any extra letters, or could have extra letters. Okay, let's see there. He said, وَكُلُّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَا إِمَّا مُجَرَّد وَإِمَّا مَزِيدٌ فِيهِ. وكل واحد منهما إما مجرد وإما مزيد فيه. Each one of them, each one of what? وكل واحد منهما means if it's 3 original letters, فعل, or if it's 4 original letters, فعلل. Each one of those, إما مجرد وإما مزيد فيه, either is devoid of any extra letters, like dahraja and nasara, fa'ala, fa'lala, nasara, dahraja, wa imma mazidun fih, or it has extra letters, like I'll just add something, intasara, intasara. We didn't see that in the book, but I'm just giving it to you here. So you see noon sad ra, intasara, that's thulathi mazidun fi. And like tadahraja, that's ruba'i mazidun fi. If you don't require my translation right there, then that's good. Any question? And so what are you doing here? You're learning the outline so that you can apply this in a broad sense to anything that you come across. He says, وَكُلُّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَا إِمَّا سَالِمٌ أَوْ غَيْرُ سَالِمٌ. And both of those are either sound or unsound. وَنَعْنِي بِالسَّالِمِ مَا سَلِمَتْ حُرُوفُهُ الْأَصْلِيَّةِ التي تقابل بالفاء والعين واللام من حروف العلة والهمزة والتضعيف. So he's telling us also you can have sound verb or unsound verb, salim or غير salim. وكل واحد منهما إما سالم أو غير سالم. So I'm just writing the word here. I don't know how it's going to end up. I might wind up relocating the word. Salim and غير salim. So salim is what? Sound. Seen, lam, mim has meaning of soundness. Allah's name is As-Salam. That means the one who is clear of imperfection. Salim or Ghayru Salim? What's going to make it Ghayru Salim? He said, what we mean by Ghayru Salim is for one of its original letters to be an alif, or a waw, or a ya, or a hamza, or to be, I'm going to put a shadda here, doubled. For the original letter to be doubled. Then it's going to be غير سالم. Okay. Now, we have, for the most part, been avoiding this. The author's presentation here in this matan of Izzi is very systematic. And it builds on itself exquisitely. So we are avoiding so far what's unsound, because you're not going to start there. You need to start with sound. That's where all your normal rules are, and then Once that's clear, then you deal with the cases that are unsound so you can see how to make the adjustments. But to remind you, what makes these unsound? As for alif and waw and ya, they don't stay firm and they turn into each other. They turn into each other and they are omitted altogether. Or they even sometimes turn into a hamza. That's why you can say, qala, he said, yaqulu, he says, and qila, it was said, and qul, say. The masdar is qawl. You say qala yaqulu qawlan. That's the masdar. So that masdar right there proves for you what's the original letter. The wow. So when you say qala, there's no wow there. That means something happened. There was some change. How? Why? You would explain all of that when you get there. And yaqulu, the wow is there. It appears. But there's still something there, though. Because you don't say yaqul. You say yaqul, yaf'ul. You don't say yaqul, even though you're able to. So something happened there, too. You say yaqul. And you see qila. There's no wow there. There's something there, though. And qul, the wow is completely gone and hasn't even transformed into something here. So because of that, those are ghayru salim. And Hamza is like these. The Hamza is like these unsound letters. Hamza still has its own category, though. But there's a relationship between these four. And as for the shadda, that's like when the word is marra. The origin is marara. So something happened there. What happened there? And what's the mudari'? Yamurru. Marra yamurru. The origin is to say yamrur. Yamrur. You don't say yamrur. Say yamur. So all of that will come, inshallah, in its place. Until then, we're going to be dealing with salim. That's all the other letters. Any question here? And please don't be shy. And he said, أما الثلاثي المجرد فإن كان معضيه على وزن فعل مفتوح العين فمضارعه يفعل أو يفعل بضم العين أو كسرها نحو نصر ينصر وضرب يضرب ويجيء على وزن يفعل بفتح العين etc. there. وإن كان ماضيه على وزن فعل. Okay, so I'm not going to read all of that. I'm just going to review this with you real quick here. What is he saying? He's saying this part, I think we studied it well. How's the maldi going to be? The thulathi. It's either going to be fa'ala or fa'ila or fa'ula. And how's mudari going to be? Yaf'alu or yaf'ilu or yaf'ulu. Yani, if we want to, it's going to be marfu' though, without anything to make it otherwise. And he was telling us, Bismillah. And as you know, because he studied it and we reviewed it, alhamdulillah. So if the maldi is fa'ala, then the mudari' could be yaf'al. MashaAllah. Then the mudari' could be yaf'alu or yaf'ilu or yaf'ulu. Although there's something here for yaf'al. There's something here for yaf'al. And if it is fa'ila, then the mudari' can be yaf'alu or yaf'ilu. Although actually here too, got something there. You review, inshallah. And never yaf'ul. You don't say fa'ila yaf'ul. And as for fa'ula, its mudari' is going to be yaf'ul only. Any question here? So that's what he said, all of these lines here. Then he went to talk about the ruba'i. وَأَمَّا الرُّبَاعِيُّ الْمُجَرَّدْ فَهُوَ بَابٌ وَاحِدٌ. As for originally 4 letters, devoid of any extra letters, there's only one pattern for it. فَعْلَلَ كَدَحْرَجَ يُدَحْرِجُ دَحْرَجَةً وَدِحْرَاجًا. And you remember this here, insha'Allah ta'ala. So he said, كَدَحْرَجَ. So dahraja, that's your verb there, maldi. Yudahriju, that's your mudari', starts with a dhamma. That's familiar to you now. Why it starts with a dhamma, this mudari' here? Because the maldi has 4 letters. When we first read this, doesn't even register for you. Now should definitely register for you. Had there been a fatha there, you should say, hey, wait, hold on a second. What's going on here? Dahraja yudahriju dahrajatan. What's that? Source noun. And dihraja, what's this? That's another source noun, because it's possible that there would be 2 masdars with the same verbs. Okay, then he says, وَأَمَّا الثُّلَاثِيُّ الْمَزِيدُ فِيهِ فَهُوَ عَلَى ثَلَاثَةِ أَقْسَامٍ. Then he said, as for 3 original letters with something extra, there's 3 divisions. And then he tells us, when the past tense has 4 letters, when the past tense has 5 letters, when the past tense has 6 letters. So let's look here. الثلاثي المزيد فيه. He says there's 3 cases. Either has 4 letters, or has 5 letters, or has 6 letters. So 4 letters is like akrama and qatala and farraha. Or if I want to, instead of giving you actually verbs, I'll just give you patterns. You have to fill in those patterns with letters. So such as أفعل and فاعل and فعل. ثلاثي مزيد فيه بحرف واحد. 3 letters with 1 extra letter. Or إن فعل and افتعل and افعل. Or 6 letters like استفعل استفعل. Or افعل. Any question here? That's good. If all this is clear for you, then Alhamdulillah. So he says, الأول ما كان ماضيه على أربعة أحرف. The first one is the one that its past tense has 4 letters. كأفعل نحو أكرم يكرم إكراما. So that's clear inshallah. وفعل نحو فرح يفرح تفريحا. So you know يكرم has to have dhamma here, يفرح has to have dhamma here. Like we said, it didn't register the first time. Yani, unless you already knew. So it means now you are seeing the mechanics of it. وفاعل نحو قاتل يقاتل مقاتلة وقتالا. Here. مقاتلة, that's masdar. وقتالا, that's another masdar. There's some words, you know, like كفر, يكفر, كفرا وكفرانا. كفرا وكفرانا. 2 masdars. كفر يكفر كفرا وكفرانا. They both mean the same thing, really, kufr and kufran. But the people use kufr to mean blasphemy and kufran to mean ungratefulness. But they really mean the same thing. He said, وَالثَّانِي مَا كَانَ مَاضِيهِ عَلَى خَمْسَةِ أَحْرُفٍ. The second one is the one that its past tense has 5 letters. إِمَّا فِي أَوَّلِهِ التَّاء. Either it starts with a ta, مثل تفعل نحو تكسر يتكسر تكسرا. And تفاعل نحو تباعد يتباعد تباعدا. So that's clear inshallah. That your maldi, your mudari', and your masdar. Maldi, mudari', masdar. Always. So that's clear for you. وَإِمَّا فِي أَوَّلِهِ الْهَمْزَةِ. Or it starts with a hamza. Hamza to wasl. مثل إن فعل نحو انقطع ينقطع انقطاعا. وافتعل نحو اجتمع يجتمع اجتماعا. وافعل نحو احمر يحمر احمرارا. والثالث ما كان ماضيه على 6 أحرف. And the third one is when its past tense has 6 letters. So what were we talking about here? Thulathi, 3 original letters. If the past tense has 6 letters, that means 3 are extra. مثل استفعل, like استفعل نحو استخرج يستخرج استخراجا. وافعال نحو حمار يحمار حميرارا. You have to take your time when you read something like that. If you don't want to have bad accents, I'm talking about somebody that's not his original language. إفعال إحمار يحمار. You might have to be patient with yourself there for that alif and that shadda. وافعوا على نحو عشوشب يعشوش بعشي شابا. But you won't see something like that a lot. وافعل نحو قعنس سيقعنس قعنس يقعنس سقع ساسا. And the rest of these here. Then he says, I'm skipping a little bit here. وَأَمَّا الرُّبَاعِيُّ الْمَزِيدُ فِيهِ. And as for four original letters with something extra, فَأَمْثِلَتُهُ ثَلَاثَ, has three patterns. تَفَعْلَلَ كَتَدَحْرَجَ يَتَدَحْرَجُ تَدَحْرُجَ. وَافْعَلَّلَ كَحْرَنْجَمَ يَحْرَنْجِ مُحْرٍ جَامَ. وَافْعَلَلَ كَقْشَعَرَّ يَقْشَعِرُّ قُشِعْرَارًا. Okay. If you have a question, go ahead and ask, please. So after he got all of that out of the way, so that's very important base and introduction. Now, before he tells you about before he tells you about mabni lil fa'il and mabni lil maf'ul, before he tells you about active voice and passive voice, what does he do? He gives you an important introduction. What he called tambih, alert, notice. Yes. Which is that you need to know, in order to understand what's coming, you need to know that there's two types of verbs in Arabic. Al-fi'lu al-lazim wal-fi'lu al-muta'addi. Al-fi'l al-lazim. Sorry for poor handwriting there. And al-fi'l al-muta'addi. So fi'l lazim is what? Intransitive. Al-muta'addi is transitive. Inshallah, I spelled that right. What does it mean? Means that does the verb take a direct object or not? Does the act fall upon something or not? If it doesn't fall upon anything intrinsically or fundamentally, just by virtue of its mere meaning, if it is merely, let's say, the attribute of its doer, it's merely the attribute of its doer and not more, then that's called fi'lun lazim, intransitive. So you say, qama Zayd, Zayd stood. Wa jalas, and he sat. But if it takes a maf'ul bihi, a direct object, if the act falls upon something, then it's called al-muta'addi. So you say daraba Zaid. Zaid struck. And now even if I don't tell you who or what he struck, you know there is a struck one. There's a maf'rul. By your mind, you know there's maf'rul, a receiver of the act. Ra'a Zaid. Zaid saw. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Okay, I think that's clear. Now you need to know this to understand mabni lil fa'il and mabni lil maf'ul very well. Active voice and passive voice. That's what we just got out of. He said everything he wanted to say until he talked about active voice and passive voice, and then he started talking about nahu. He said ma and la will come, and it won't do anything to the verb. But then the nasib will come, and or the jazm will come, and this is how it changes the coding of the verb. And we read a little bit of that, and I wanted to go back to the beginning of that. But before that, I wanted to review with you. That's what we're doing now. Trying to get back to that spot. So you need to understand this issue of transitive and intransitive, and it's not difficult to understand anyway. Why you need to understand that for active voice and passive voice, Yani, configured for the doer, configured for the receiver? I'm going to show you, inshallah, if Allah enables me. Before that, he does talk a little bit, though, and tell us about some of the rules of this. So he said, Yani, he wanted to show us some ways. What if you have a verb that is lazim, fi'lun lazim? You need to know this word. Al-lazim wal-muta'addi. Lazim and muta'addin. That's ta. Muta'addin. Or I might say muta'addi because I'm translating without L. I might say without L, I might say muta'addi, put that ya on there. But not inside the Arabic sentence would be wrong. Yeah. So, what if your verb was lazim, intransitive, and you wanted to make it muta'addin or muta'addi, transitive? He told you how. One way is by doubling the middle letter. One way is by adding a hamza in the front. Farrahtu Zaydan. I think that's clear for you. Ajlastuhu. I made him sit. You might say in English, I sat him. We talked about that. So you have to understand the Arabic verbs as the Arabs understand them. Not according to how you would translate it into English or whatever language you speak. So that you can make it lazim or muta'addin in Arabic properly, and so that you can use the proper harf jar with it. Okay. وبحرف الجر في الكل, and always you can make a verb transitive by prepositional particle. If you have any questions there, feel free to ask. But I do want to mention for you really quickly here a benefit. The Maturidis, those are Muslims, Muslim masters of creed, of the Aqidah. Those are the ones that follow Abu Hanifa. The Maturidis, they said Allah is fa'il, doer, in eternity, and that he has a fi'l, therefore, a doing in eternity, and the maf'ul is created. The done thing is created. So the Ash'aris, they said, what? So how would he have a doing in eternity? Wouldn't that mean the done thing is eternal? If he had a doing in eternity, wouldn't that mean the done thing is eternal? No, it doesn't mean done thing is eternal. All it means is he's a doer in eternity. He's a doer with an attribute in eternity. He is a doer as an attribute in eternity. What's my point to you here? Arabic language made us understand that it's not impossible for there to be a doer and a doing without a done thing. It's not impossible that there would be a doer and a doing without a done thing. طيب. So then he wanted to talk about configuring the verb for the doer or the receiver, because that's what's now the next thing to do. Now you know all of what he gave you. And before we talk about irregular things, you need to know that these verbs, you can reconfigure them. You're going to alter their coding. So he wanted to tell you the original way first, which is to configure the verb for the doer, to make the verb accommodate a doer. That's what it's going to do originally. A verb is a doing, and so it needs a doer. So he talked about that. And he talked about the pronouns that go there too. So here in this section, look at the benefits. One benefit here in this section, because it said فَالْمَبْنِيُّ لِلْفَاعِلِ, is learning about what they will call active voice. What does it even mean? And also, when you see the examples he gave, also learned about pronouns. It is past tense. After he told us about active voice, what's that in Arabic, and he showed us the pronouns, then he told us, now do that with all these patterns. So that's your homework you should have done. You should have been done that homework. So you have all these patterns here. If you didn't do your homework, you're going to do it, inshallah. He also gave us the rule concerning the hamzatul wasl in the beginning of some of the verbs. So review that. And then And that's only for the mildly and the command. That hamzatul wasl. In other words, this hamzatul wasl will not appear in fi'l mudari'. Ibn Hisham said, Allah did not create hamzatul wasl for the fi'l mudari'. Then he went to talk about Bismillah. Configuring the verb for the receiver. How would you do it? By putting a dhamma on the first letter of that past tense and a kasra before the last letter. So you'd say fu'ila. It was done. Fu'lila. Uf'ila. Fu'ila. Fu'ila. Tufu'ila. Tufu'ila. Tufu'lila. And ustukhrija. Uftu'ila. So you need to have that ear for Arabic. So when you hear that sound of vowels, you know that's mabni lil maf'ul. Configuring the verb for the receiver. And then he talked about the mudari'. And he already now made us know what's configuring the verb for the doer or configuring the verb for the receiver. So we've been introduced to that for the mildly, and he's telling us for the mudari' too. So here in the mudari' section, he showed us what the mudari' letters are. He showed us what the mudari' letters are, those 4 letters. He told us what they mean. He told us what the mudari' verb means, that is for the present or the future, and when it can be for the future in particular, and when it can be for the present in particular, and how to configure it for the doer. Which is that you're going to start it with a fatha unless the mildly has 4 letters. Then you're going to start it with a kasra if the mildly has 4 letters, but the letter before the last one has a kasra when it's built for the doer. It has a fatha when it's built for the receiver. Now maybe that just got super condensed at the end there. But by that, we pretty much now, we just reviewed everything. Now we're ready, inshallah ta'ala, to start with the next section next time, inshallah. So please, do you have any question? I hope someone has some question. But if you don't, then that's good, inshallah ta'ala. Okay. You said in dealing with the verb that is naqis, when we look at its mildly, can we only determine its original letters from the masdar, or can we also find its asli letter from the mudari' as well? And not only naqis, yani when you're dealing with the unsound words, or root letters that possess 1 or more unsound letters, then how can you be sure which letters are the original letters? You can find that from the masdar. You can find it from the mudari', and you can find it in other places also, like broken plural or miniaturizing the word tasghir. So there's different ways you can find the original letter when you're dealing with something that's unsound. Second question is, why do we see a masdar often represented by fathatan when the word has not entered in a sentence? Okay. Because as if it did, which is if I say daraba, if that means something, it's not only just a word, then that's past action. That's past action of striking by one masculine one who's being spoken about. And well, actually, let me give you another example. Let's take the example of jalasa. Then I just tell you jalasa does not take a maf'ul bihi. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So jalasa, he sat. Okay. Past action. That's past tense, and the present would be yajlis. Okay. That's a present or future action. So, is there maybe somehow a receiver for this verb? Well, yeah. If you want to be technical, every verb actually does have a receiver, in a way. How's that? Well, because it is itself the done thing. The verb is itself the done thing. Isn't it? The action, it is itself the done thing. So, if I sat, then I sat a sitting. Julusan, I sat a sitting. They call that in Arabic maf'ul mutlaq. Maf'ul mutlaq. Maf'ul mutlaq. Basically means that the noun is the receiver of its own verb. The source is the receiver of its own verb. And this appears in the Quran frequently. وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا. كَلَّمَ تَكْلِيمًا. He spoke a speech. فَأَخَذْنَاهُمْ أَخْذَ عَزِيزٍ. أَخَذْنَاهُمْ أَخْذًا. So that's what that is there. مفعول مطلق. جَلَسَ يَجْلِسُ جُلُوسًا. He sat, he sits. Like, it's like there's slash there. Jalasa yajlisu julusan. So you could say jalasa julusan. You could say yajlisu julusan. He sat a sitting, or he sits a sitting, or he shall sit a sitting. Jalasa yajlisu julusan. Fahuwa jalis. And therefore he's a sitter. So, daraba yadribu. He strikes darban, a strike, or a striking. فهو ضارب, therefore he's a striker. وذاك مضروب, and that is struck. There was something actually. We're going overtime now. I usually don't like the Sarf lesson to be this long. There was something I actually forgot to mention, so I'll mention it next week, inshallah. Do you have any other questions?